All right. All right, let's call the meeting to order. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the District Seashell Committee of the Whole meeting for February 24th, 2021. To call the meeting to order for 3 p.m. and ask for any declarations of conflict. And hearing none, before we move to adopt, any additions to the agenda? Mayor Seegers?
Thank you. I'd like to add item 5.2, responsive community grant to the agenda.
Okay. 5.2, responsive community grant. Anybody else? No? Okay, can I ask for a motion to adopt the amended agenda with the addition? Moved, seconded, all in favor? Perfect. Item 3, appointments and delegations. We have a delegation from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. So Ms. Farmer, Mr. Braun, Mr. Lord, and Mr. Curry. And there's a presentation to be given on this. Who's speaking for one?
Oh, hi, everyone. I'm Elena Farmer. Ken Curry, who is here from Parsons, he's going to be leading us through a presentation of the study that was completed on Highway 1 and the results.
Okay, thanks, Elena. I'm going to share my screen here. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to see if I get this going through slideshow. Here we go. Does everyone see that with slideshow?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we're just going to give a summary of the Highway 101 corridor study that was done in completed last fall. And we'll just kind of go through some of the highlights today about what some of the findings were and a bit of the methodology. So today we'll talk a little bit about recap of the study objectives. We'll talk a little bit about the problem definition summary, so some of the issues we identified out there, some of the improvement options that we considered. We went through a kind of a high-level evaluation of those options, and we'll talk a little bit about those results and findings. And then we put together a bit of a implementation timeline for some recommendations to the ministry for eventual, you're looking at timelines for improvements along the corridor. And then we have some time for questions afterwards. So study objectives, I'll just go through these quickly. So we were tasked to look at the existing conditions of the corridor in terms of access, mobility, safety, some geometry, and considering things such as structures and drainage and utilities and environmental when we look at improvements. But we're also asked to look at the future corridor performance as well. So we look at the growth plans in the communities and with potential increases in ferry traffic, and look at all that with respect to seasonal traffic patterns and local traffic growth. And then through those, the existing conditions and the future conditions, we would do a bit of analysis to identify some of the problems or deficiencies along the corridor with respect to, as I mentioned, the existing and the future conditions, so that things that we could look to probably potentially improving the corridor, but definitely identifying those areas of deficiencies that would lead to some potential mitigation measures. The next thing was then to generate some options or some mitigation measures, some alternatives to respond to those problems identified, and to look at these things in both the short and medium term and even into the long-term horizon. And then lastly, we would develop a bit of an implementation strategy or timeline for some of those recommendations of when we think they would need to be implemented. And through our whole process, this was more of an internal study. So we were engaging with the local municipalities, we were engaging with the First Nations and other key stakeholders, but we were not, this study did not involve any meetings with the public. So the problem definition area, just kind of highlight a few things. So this is the study area that we were tasked with. So we went from the Langdale Ferry Terminal all the way out to Red Roofs Road. So we looked at the entire Highway 101 corridor in this area. And you'll see the different colors here. We broke it into some different areas, some for the kind of the more urban areas, some for the more rural areas, and some based on the geometry of the road, such as the initial segment from the ferry terminal to Stewart Road, for example, being a 4-lane highway in that area, and the other sections being 2 lanes. So each section was analyzed a little bit differently. When we looked at looking at some of the analysis that we were looking to do on the corridor from a highway operations standpoint, we were definitely looking at the capacity analysis of the corridor. So there's definitely some concern that was the existing corridor exceeding capacity at any time, both existing or in the future. So we looked at the rural segment primarily. That was what's being driven out there from a highway operations standpoint. So the segment between Veterans Road and Field Road, we broke that into 2 pieces. And then the intersection operations, we looked at those. Those are governing the capacity of the highway at those nodes. So we looked at 11 intersections along the corridor to assess the capacity analysis at those locations. And then we did a safety analysis of the entire corridor. So we looked at the corridor segments, and we looked at each individual intersection as well, where we have data collected over the last 5 or 7 years. And then we did a high-level review of the active transportation and transit in the corridor, and looked at how we could address those as part of other improvements for the corridor. From a highway operations standpoint, so in that rural section between Veterans Road and Field Road, we looked at the segments there, both in the existing and the future. And this is the existing situation out there today, as we analyzed in 2018, and we looked at summer and fall. And here we're looking at a level of service. So this is more about passing opportunities, time spent following, and so this is a kind of an industry standard measure of analyzing 2-lane highways. And the information that we present in the screen is showing a level of service, and we rank that as a level of A to F. So E and F are typically kind of considered unsatisfactory. A to D is deemed to be satisfactory. So A telling us that there's a really good level of service, F telling us that there's really poor level of service, and so there's a time spent following is really high if there's a level of service F. So we see here in this table that today, when we look at both the summer and we look at the fall, that the highway is right at that kind of cusp. It's at that level of service D. So it's just about at the area where we look at trying to make some improvements. But when we look at the future, and we went out to 2035, so we looked at that period we used or developed based on some of the OCPs of both Gibson's and Seashell, and some work that was done for the regional district. And so we came up with the 2035 as kind of a good point to forecast our traffic volumes. And when we look at the 2035 in both the summer and the fall, we can see definitely during the summer volumes that we're getting into some issues. And we see that we're getting into level services D, E's, and F's. So the facility by 2035 or before would start to have a kind of an undesirable level of service out there in terms of percent time following. But the segment that I will draw everyone's attention to is from Field Road to Roberts Creek Road. There's the existing in the southbound direction passing lane there, and we can see that segment, even into the future, 2035, is performing at a level of service C. So that we can see that the existing passing lane provides a good level of service on that segment of road in the southbound direction. So from our analysis here, we're seeing that the highway itself in that 2-lane segment between Seashell and Gibson's is not running at capacity. It's got lots and lots of capacity there. I think the highest volumes we recorded were somewhere around between 600 and 800 vehicles per hour per lane in each direction. So quite under what would be considered a capacity for a 2-lane highway. But the level of service that we're seeing was more of a true indication of the level of how the highway segment is operating. And this analysis tells us that by 2035, in the summer, we will start seeing some issues popping up before that. In the fall, when summer traffic is down, we see that the highway does operate even in 2035 right at that cusp. Intersection operations. So these are, at the signalized intersections, these are, what's kind of controlling the operation of the highway, the capacity of the highway within the more urban areas. So we analyzed all 11 intersections and looked at the traffic volumes there. And again, we did this for existing and future conditions. So the first few columns are, kind of AM and midday and PM peak periods for the existing conditions, and the future for the same periods. And then here we've, again, the level of service is rated from A to F, with A's being good and F's being pretty poor condition, lots of average vehicle delay per vehicle. And through all this analysis that we did, when we looked at, this is all the fall operating conditions, that there's only one instance, one intersection that was showing us with poor movements, and that was at the Wharf Avenue, Dolphin Street intersection, where we had the westbound left turn there was definitely, we call failing, but definitely poor levels of service, lots of delay for that movement. So that one definitely needed to be addressed as part of our option and mitigation measures. From traffic safety collision analysis, so we looked at data from 2008 to 2017. So we actually have about 10 years of data here. There was a total of just over 600, almost 700 records in that area. And from that, we looked at the severity. So how many fatal incidents were there, personal injury, and then property damage only. So we saw about half of the incidents were personal injury or fatalities. And then one of the key things here that kind of stood out and kind of helped us direct some of our potential improvements was the type of collisions that we saw in the corridor. And the collision, we look at the common collision types, the bar chart below. We see rear end collisions were actually the most prominent type of incidents that we had in the corridor. That tells us when we think of a corridor like this, is that we're probably seeing some incidents where vehicles are stopping to turn left off the highway, and they're stopping in the through lane because there is no turn lanes, and they're being rear-ended by other cars not expecting that there's a vehicle stopped to turn off the highway. And so again, that kind of guided some of our mitigation measure development. So this map, this provides a kind of a summary of all the performance and safety deficiencies along the corridor. So we had quite a few, and I didn't touch much on the Davis Bay segment, but there's definitely a lot of safety issues in that segment at some of the intersections. So that one kind of got some special treatment in our development of mitigation measures. Okay, so the improvement options, this at a high level. We looked at, again, when you think of the highway performance, the two-lane rural section, the intersection performance, and then the safety, we looked at where we had the issues and what time frame, whether there's existing deficiencies or future, and then what kind of potential improvement options could we look at that would address these deficiencies. And so we looked at new passing lanes for the highway segment, the rural section, to address the level of service issue. Not, like as I mentioned before, not a capacity issue out there. It's more of level of service of percent time following. Intersection performance, we looked at increasing the capacity at some of the intersections, and primarily that Dolphin Wharf Street intersection. And then safety improvements. This is where we did a lot of focus of our improvements, is looking at left turns off the highway, acceleration, decelerations onto the highway and off, and then some modified geometry at some of the intersections to improve the angle that the adjacent or approaching intersection connects to the highway. Also, we also looked at some places for some turn restrictions, and even in a couple locations, some new traffic signals. So with respect to the highway, the rural section, the passing lanes between Gibson and Seasalt, we looked at 3 passing lane improvements were developed there. Between the Field Road and Veterans Road area. The intersection improvements, we looked at, again, left turn lanes, channelization, reconfiguring some of the intersections. We also had some improved intersection geometry. And then through all that, we came up with about 8 major intersection improvements were identified. And then we looked at, especially in the Davis Bay segment, improving the overall cross section, because we had so many locations where we felt that some intersections need to be improved. That we felt that the overall cross section through that segment needed to be addressed, and that would also address some of the pedestrian and active transportation aspects. And then for the long term, to address some of the intersection issues in the Gibsons area, we did look at a couple short bypass segments around the Gibsons area to address the probably beyond 2035 time frame, when some of the intersections there were starting to get to capacity. So we just think of a couple little things like the passing lanes. Here we look at between the southbound direction between Veterans Road and Roberts Creek Road. So we would think that we looked at about a 1,200 meters segment between Leak Road and Highland Road to address the poor level service in the southbound direction on this side of Field Road, or I'm sorry, of Roberts Creek Road, sorry. And then similarly in the northbound direction, we looked at about a 1,600 meter long northbound passing lane between Leak Road and Masco Road. And these distances, the locations, we looked at these, trying to optimize the locations in terms of the reducing or minimizing the number of conflicts with some municipal roads or even with driveways. So we're trying to, reduce those numbers as much as we can. So that's where we tried to optimize and maximize the length of the passing lanes. So this one was a northbound passing lane opportunity between Veterans Road and Roberts Creek Road. And then the last one was a 1,800 meter northbound passing lane between Pell Road and Jack Road. So these are the 3 passing lane options that we considered in our improvements. And then when we think of intersection improvements, there's been quite a few that I mentioned that we looked at about 8 different intersections. And so here at Joe Road, Orange Road, we looked at adding a northbound left turn lane and a southbound left turn lane, so kind of opposing left turn lanes. And this is one of those locations that today there's no left turn bays there. And so this could be a reason for, the rear end issue popping up in terms of collisions. So by separating out the through movements from the left turn lanes, we hope to improve the safety there, and then we can improve the overall intersection geometry with those improvements. At the Flume Road area, we looked at kind of a couple of improvements at Flume Road and Marianne Road. And here we would again be adding left turn bays at these locations to separate the left turn movements away from the through movements. And then we just probably have a painted median in between the 2 intersections given their close proximity. At Lower Road and Highland Road, again, we'd be looking at adding the left turn lanes. And then we'd also be looking here we felt that having a deceleration lane in the southbound direction might help a little bit given the tight geometry on the Lower Road. So those would be the improvements that we put forward at that location. At Tita Way, this one was a safety issue that was raised, and so this one we recommended to the ministry to look at, maybe looking at a southbound left turn protected only phase. This would, when we looked at the collision types at this intersection, we saw that there was it looked like a few collisions that were related to people making unsafe left turn movements. So we felt that if we put that in a protected only phase, that could improve that operation. And then at Wharf Avenue, we had the kind of capacity issues that we raised. So we felt we would reconfigure this intersection to allow dual left turn movements in the westbound direction. And then that would mean that some minor modifications of Wharf Avenue to receive those 2 left turn lanes. So that would mean potentially modifying the angle parking to convert that to parallel parking in the Wharf Avenue area, and then that would give an opportunity to improve the active transportation facilities adjacent to the parallel parking. At Shorncliffe, we recommended tightening up the intersection, so improving the geometry here. So we would look at modifying the islands, the channelization. That would reduce the crosswalk distances at the location as well. So we'd have reduced the exposure for pedestrians crossing the road. And this is a location that could potentially be where a traffic signal, or at least a pedestrian crossing signal, could be located to improve pedestrian safety crossing the highway. Then a couple other smaller ones, just some realignments. This is at Hill Road. The existing intersections, connects with Highway 101, very skewed angle, poor sight distances. So we put forward a recommendation to look at an alternate access for the residents on Dale Road, where we have a connection go out on the backside and connect up to the highway with a more perpendicular intersection with left turn bay at that location. And similar at Red Roofs Road, again, the skew angle makes it difficult for clear lines of sight when turning off of Red Roofs onto the highway. So we would suggest a slight realignment to make the intersection a little bit more of a perpendicular angle at where it intersects with the highway. As I mentioned at Davis Bay, there was a number of safety improvements that we felt were necessary at this location, a lot of collisions in this area. And so through that, we felt that it was kind of necessary almost to improve the overall cross-section through this area from the very south to up to Monkey Tree Lane. So here, we're suggesting at Davis Bay Road that possibly a new traffic signal be put into that location at that intersection. And then left turn lanes are proposed at these intersections you see here from Mission Road, Heather Road, Selma Park Road, for example. And then we'd also look at restrictions of turning movements at Whitaker Road, Wesley Road, and Habby's Road. We restrict that to right in, right outs only. And then we would also recommend closing the north intersection at Monkey Tree Lane. So we're trying to reduce the conflicts as much as we can along this segment, but where we think it's warranted is to also improve the access off of the highway with the left turn bays, so that we're not affecting the through movement, and we be improving the safety at those intersections. So the cross section that we were proposing for this area in the Davis Bay would have 2 through lanes. It'd have a center left turn lane, both in the for the northbound southbound movements where applicable. We look at putting a 2-meter shoulder. This would be to the ministry standard for cycling. And then we'd also have a sidewalk on the east side. Okay. And so this gives us a little overall list of or map of where all the intersection improvements are being proposed and the passing lanes. And this also shows the long-term bypass options that we did explore. So we did look at 3 bypass options, 1, 2, 3. One was looking at a shorter bypass of using Reed Road. With the second one, option 2, the red one, was looking at a bypass option, kind of cutting through the backs of the properties between Cemetery Road and Reed Road, so we wouldn't be having any access issues. And then the third one was kind of a continuation of Highway 101 adjacent to the hydro right away, and then coming and connecting back to Payne Road. And then we had different options for connecting back up to Gibson's Way or Highway 101 from Payne Road, and potentially just going to the other side of some of the development to stay away from the accesses that are onto the Payne Road. I think what we find, and I think our recommendations was to probably proceed or to consider further bypass option 3, much because things like Reed Road has a lot of access onto it. So the bypass would almost be conflicted from day one if development continued in that area, and we'd end up having a lot of accesses on onto the bypass that we're trying to avoid on the existing corridor. So I'll quickly go through the evaluation results. So the passing lanes, we found that all the three passing lanes, when we did examine these, so the one in the southbound direction, the two in the northbound direction, we did get into a level, acceptable level of service well to 2035. So we did see definitely some big benefits with those. And so we are recommending that the ministry consider those in the future. And then with the intersections that we looked at what kind of improvements we'd see in terms of collision reduction, and we saw kind of moderate to minor improvements. So on average, some places like Joe Road, Orange Road, almost a collision per year on average could be potentially reduced with those intersection improvements. Up to just a little bit over one at Flume Road, for example. Some minor ones improvements at Lower Road, Highland Road, and then same with at Tita Way intersection. And then with the double left turns that we're proposing in the future at Wharf Avenue, Dolphin Street, we would see that the level of service would be improved to acceptable levels by 2035. And Shorncliffe, we saw that from the collision data we have that we would see a kind of minor improvements there in the average collisions being reduced per year, and similar at Hill Road and Red Roos Road. Those are fairly minor volume intersections. But when we look at the whole Davis Bay, the Summit Park area, when we look at all those improvements being put together, we could see, based on existing data, that we could see upwards of almost 7 collisions per year being reduced in that area. Active transportation. So when we went through and did our reviews along the corridor and met with the Sechelt, Gibsons, and with the regional district, and with the First Nations themselves, we found that there was a lot of gaps in the active transportation facilities out there today, both in sidewalks and cycle lanes, and especially in the urban areas. Narrow shoulders along the highway in the rural areas, definitely not to current standards, and there's some informal facilities or limited space at several of the transit stops along the corridor. So, very tight spacing for some of those stops. So when we think about some of the things that came out of our study, targeted improvements, we definitely are showing improvements that focus on Shorncliffe Avenue to improve pedestrian and active transportation crossing the highway. So improve geometry, the traffic islands, and channelization, and potential pedestrian signals. The Davis Bay area, there we looked at some significant improvements that would come with the improved cross-section, which would include shoulder cycle lanes on both sides and a sidewalk on the east side. And then when we look at the other locations, such as Wharf Avenue, Dolphin Street, those improvements, those would definitely facilitate improving the pedestrian facilities, let's say along 4th Avenue, part of that intersection improvement. And then the passing lanes and the row segments would definitely present an opportunity to widen the shoulders to current standards in those locations. There's over 4.6 kilometers of passing lanes that have been proposed here. So we get a lot of improvements to the shoulders in those locations. And then everywhere else that there was a intersection improvement, there would definitely be the roadway would be reconstructed to current standards, so there would be shoulder widening as part of those projects when they were approved for implementation. So finally, just to put a little summary on some timelines. So what we've recommended back to the ministry was the following intersection safety improvements be moved forward. So Joe Road, Orange Road, kind of a top of the list, and Shorncliffe Road, followed by Lower Road and Highland Road, and then Tita Way. And then one of the things to address some of the traffic issues that we saw and what we heard back from the town of Gibsons as well is, quite a few of the intersections, they do experience within the peak hour some isolated delays, and it's really to do with the ferry traffic surges. And so they see maybe within 20 minutes to half an hour, within the hour, significant delays at some of the intersections. But when we look at the intersection on the overall hour, they're operating not too bad. So what we've suggested that the ministry consider is what we call adaptive signal control. And that's where the signals, have detectors before and afterwards, and they can see the demand increasing, and they automatically adjust the signal timing so that the green split towards the highway would increase temporarily to adjust the demand, and then go back to the normal signal timing plan based on the normal conditions outside those ferry traffic switches. And then the last one that we felt was a project to move ahead in the short term is the passing lane, the northbound passing lane between Veterans Road and Roberts Creek Road. And then the other intersection improvements and passing lanes would be considered in the medium term, and where that falls into play. And in terms of timelines, that would be, I guess, based on budget availability and other ministry priorities elsewhere. And then the long-term projects beyond 2035, this is where we suggested that the bypass considerations be examined a bit further, would be beyond 2035. So that's the end of the presentation. So I don't know if you want to address any questions at this time. Stop sharing here.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that. That was excellent. Council? Councilor McLean.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the Davis Bay section. Is it proposed to do the entire cross section to have a turning lane, or is that only at intersection? I wasn't clear in the report.
What we recommended there is almost the entire cross section almost have that kind of center lane. There might be some places where between intersections, it might just be easier just to go back to the 2-lane corridor. But given the number of intersections along there and the number of places where we're recommending the left turn lanes, it's probably better to almost keep that same width throughout and just have a painted median between intersections where you don't need the left turn bay. But that would be a design decision later on. Like this is kind of at the planning level, definitely our recommendations at what we think is probably looking better out there and probably operating better. But definitely a lot of design decisions would need to be made once that project moves into implementation and moves into an actual project.
Okay, and just to follow up to that. I have concerns about doing that middle section, particularly between Selma Park Road and Snodgrass Road. There's some very steep driveway accesses there, and quite frankly, the shoulder there is probably about a foot wide right now. So to add a middle lane, turning lane, and middle lane, shoulders, and a sidewalk, I don't see how that could fit with the geography in that section in particular.
Yeah, and that might be exactly a design consideration, that at those locations there where we really limited with right-of-way and topography, to go with a narrower cross-section of this 2-lane roadway.
Perfect. Anybody else? Mayor Seegers?
Thank you. I noticed in your presentation, you talked about short term and medium term, but you only indicated long term at 2035. What is considered short term and what is considered medium term? Because I know we have some projects that we're looking at in the district, and I don't think our timelines meet.
I can take this one. So there isn't necessarily any like fixed timelines associated with short and medium terms. It's kind of used to give us an idea of things that maybe could be done soon and things that maybe would wait. In general, short term is more in that 1 to 5 years, and medium is kind of 5 to 15 years, like generally speaking. I know that at the meeting we had with the the SCRD, you had, mentioned specifically about the works that the District of Sechelt is planning at Wharf Street. And we did loop back with our team following that meeting, and we did receive the 75% designs the next week. So, there's that opportunity that we can have that discussion about the works that you're planning and how we can potentially advance some of the findings from this particular study to have those take place kind of at a similar time frame, instead of work being done and then a couple of years later you're tearing it open. So we hear you. We don't want to do that either. And it's really, this is the first step that kind of gives us some direction on some of the things that need to be done along the corridor. And now it's about working with the various municipalities and regional districts to find out what are your priorities and what are your plans and how do we kind of fit it all in together.
I'm going to follow up on Councillor McLean's comment about Davis Bay. And I know that in previous years, there was a plan with Ministry of Transport and the District of Sechelt to jointly do some of that work in Davis Bay. And we had some of those funds in our capital budget for a number of years. And I know that there were cutbacks provincially and that the project was taken out of the priorities at that point with Ministry of Transport. So what we'd like to look at, and I know the community's very much watching this, is how do we together move a project like that forward? Because we need to budget for it, you guys need to budget for it. So how do we actually engage in those processes so we can have some timeframes so we can take those out to the community as well?
So I think it's really, I think having some of these follow-up meetings to discuss what the priorities are and what we'd like to see these projects look like in order for the ministry to see what types of programs are available that we can tap into to get the funding and to make sure it aligns with the District of Sechelt's ability to also provide that funding. So I think, I look at today's meeting as kind of like that first step to start some of this engagement on some of the priorities. And, I look forward to kind of building a good relationship with the District of Sechelt and to really understand what the priorities are and how we can make sure that the work that the ministry is planning to do kind of is going to complement what the District of Sechelt and vice versa. So I'm, happy to, meet with your staff, if it's at the staff level, to have those discussions and then come back to speak with council in order to kind of put together a bit of a plan on how we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
That works.
That would be totally, that's what we're looking for. We know, we're all dealing with limited budgets. Mm-hmm. And, it benefits everybody if we have those planning opportunities and can work together moving forward. So love that you're here and willing to work with us on that. We have some great staff. Mm-hmm. They've got a number of questions and things as well. So unless council has more, I know council has a few more questions, and then I know staff will have some questions for you. Thank you.
Councilor McLean.
Yeah, so absolutely. Thanks for that commitment to working together. I can name several projects that would be in great need of collaboration. We had the Davis Bay sidewalk around Bay Road, which was fully funded by us. We were just waiting for Modi to come in around 2017. We have the Wharf Avenue, which is ready to go now by us, which we can do independently, but we'd rather do it with you and implement these 2 lanes and get added benefits. And then we also have Shorncliffe. We have a developer proposal to fund a reflective beacon sidewalk. And it differs from what's been presented in the report here, but it is identifying that we do need to improve that intersection at Shorncliffe. So those are 3 that are on the table that we'd really like to see. And there's many more. I've seen the list that staff has. It's quite comprehensive. So thank you for that approach. But my actual question, just going back to the wider corridor through Davis Bay, I do have concern with that cross section going through the section that goes by the waterfront. So from Whitaker Road to Bay Road, and concerns about impacting our seawall and the parking associated with that. That's probably one of the prime assets that the District of Sechelt has, is that very highly accessible walkway and easy parking next to it. So would a wider cross section through the highway significantly impact parking there?
I think that it's too early to really say. Like it is a planning level study, so it is kind of taking more like a detailed but a high level look at the corridor and making some suggestions, and that there are going to be limitations to property and other infrastructure that is there that would really come out as we start to I think dig in a little bit deeper into these various projects and seeing where some of the constraints and whatnot would be. We're not looking, I think, to make especially when it comes to active transportation we want to improve active transportation, and so we would not be looking to implement improvements that we're going to change that. So I think that those are some of the conversations that are going to be really important for us to continue as we work through the various projects and the priorities to understand what the constraints are going to be and what the improvements are really going to look at. This is just kind of really that first step in identifying what they think some of the improvements could look like. It's not until you really get funding and build a project and work through the designs that you can really that we can really speak to those types of things. But I hear you, and I'm making a note of that so that it's something that doesn't get lost as if we move that project forward or when we do move that project forward.
Yeah, just to follow up on Elena's comment, that's what we saw in the report is really just a recommended proposed cross section, and if that project moves forward, I imagine the final cross section will look quite different.
Mm-hmm.
Very likely, yes.
Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. I noticed in the report that all of the bypass options seem to be focused on the south end, right down around Gibson's, etc. One of the concerns on the Sunshine Coast is Chapman Creek, the Chapman Creek crossing. If something was to happen that we would lose that bridge, whole part of the coast would be cut off. So I'm wondering, were bypass options, to maybe bypass Davis Bay considered and not looked at this time? Is that something that's going to be looked at in the future? Potentially Upfield Road or something to give us another option.
So the study itself focused on more of a Gibson's bypass. And back in September, when the report was actually published and made to the public, there was an announcement that there would be a bypass study. So things have been a little bit delayed just with the election that took place and new ministers and some of the briefings that are taking place. But we are moving forward with doing a full bypass study that is going to, I think, address what you're speaking to. It just kind of, I think, warrants its own look versus kind of being a part of this original study. So that work is, we've just assigned a project manager, and we'll be looking to initiate that. And as part of that, we definitely will be engaging with yourselves and the other community, the other municipalities and regional districts.
Okay, and is that looking at like a whole full bypass, or potentially staging it?
It's looking at a full bypass, but it could have staged elements to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Dillon, Director Dillon.
Yeah, hello. Nice to meet you today, and thank you very much for your presentation, which was quite comprehensive. And I'm the Director of Engineering Operations here, just been here for since last November. So it's a challenging highway, no doubt. There's a lot of physical, spatial constraints. I used to work with a highway agency, so I know how this whole process works. And my understanding is you're very early stages with the corridor safety study And I would imagine that would be translated into some sort of a functional plan for the for various sections of the highway after that, and then the ensuing capital program would come out of that. A lot of my concerns are operational in nature, and this might not be the forum today to discuss those operational concerns. But that being said, it would be good to, as you move out of the planning stage into some of the more preliminary and detailed design, it would be great if you would engage with some of the engineering staff at the District of Sechelt and see if we could have opportunities to comment on some of these things, maybe propose alternative design solutions. I mean, roundabouts would be one way to address some of the intersection issues. There's numerous clear zone issues. I don't even think there is a clear zone around the highway when it goes through Davis Bay and Selma Park. So I don't know how you would address those, but maybe there's alternative treatments there. The other one is there's some sections I noticed, I don't know if there's something that you could deal with, or maybe it's an operational issue, but there are dashed lines indicating passing through Selma Park and Davis Bay. And, you know, given that the spacing of the driveways are probably not in conformance with TAC, I would think, I don't think there should be any passing allowed through that area. I've myself seen dangerous passing at night where people come out of their driveway. That could be quite a with the sight lines being the way they are, could be a dangerous situation. So I would maybe a message to translate to the right person, but I would have those as double solids all through Davis and Selma Park. And yeah, we're just excited and would like to engage further with MOTI. And thank you for the report today. And I have a lot of comments, but I'm realizing after this presentation, maybe today is not the opportunity, but if you can reach out after, be willing to share them with you.
Yeah, no, definitely look forward, to that and welcome your comments. Michael Braun is the operations manager for the Sunshine Coast, and so he really would be your first point of contact, especially when you're talking about operational concerns. Colin Midgley as well is the local area manager, and he does live on the Sunshine Coast, so he's also a good person to reach out to, as I know he's kind of the eyes and ears for Michael Braun. And, I'm also available, but I do lean on Colin and Michael a fair amount when it comes to those operational issues. And I think, in relation to the, converting to like double painted lines, like those are all things that we definitely can have those discussions about, and we can speak with our engineering group to complete some of those reviews to see, if it makes sense to move in that direction. So yeah, I look forward to kind of continuing those discussions maybe outside of today's meeting, and to really get the input from the District of Sechelt. And we're not married to any one solution. So we're happy to kind of get the feedback and make sure that what we're doing is going to work for, everybody that's using the corridor.
Yeah, that's great. And I appreciate its early stages, and I'm sure these things will get fleshed out more as you move to preliminary and detailed design. The one thing I didn't hear direct reference to, but I don't know if it was a factor in that this early study, was climate change. And we have been seeing some wave run-up events in Davis Bay. Recently, we had one in January where the highway was closed. And so taking into account Councillor McLean's concern about losing parking, I guess, one option is always to do grade raises on those areas that, could be prone to flooding, but how you do that is an exercise in detailed design. So, going forward, I think having our perspective would be valuable, so that whatever is designed and built really does serve the purpose of the community and the highway users.
And you know, the ministry a number of years ago adopted, you know, design criteria sheets that take into consider like climate adaptation. And so it is something that we're keenly aware of, and we do look to incorporate that, you know, in our designs. But, you know, getting your input is, I think, invaluable as we move along through the process and looking at the various improvements.
All righty, thank you. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I just want to echo the climate change considerations, particularly looking at Chapman Creek Bridge. This is a bridge where there's no other alternative route, and the bridge is essentially at sea level. So it's pretty high risk from the community's perspective. So I look forward to studying some of those bypass options, particularly around that bridge. I do want to commend Parsons and Mr. Curry on the report. What it did do is highlight most of the issues and started to work towards solutions. However, one concern that I didn't see highlighted was the intersection of Trail Avenue and Torito Street, or Highway 101. That is an intersection that we have seen several pedestrians be hit. It's currently has a crosswalk on it, but there's no lights or anything like that. We have requested to Modi several times for a proper signalized intersection there. Modi has responded about concerns. We've requested a flashing beacon light there. That is probably more doable. But either way, that was not mentioned in the report. So I do want to highlight that that is a concern for the District of Sechelt. There is safety concerns there. It is a very highly used intersection. And again, looking at opportunities for collaboration, we did improvements to Trail Avenue. However, we stopped it 100 feet short of the highway because we were looking for more collaboration before we continued that project to the highway. So I want to make sure that that's on the table as we move forward, because that is a really critical intersection for the District of Sechelt.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And, you know, I wrote it down. You know, there's nothing off the table, I guess, when it comes to what we are, you know, willing to talk about and to collaborate on. You know, the study is the first step, and, you know, it identified some things, and there may be things that weren't included, but it's not to say that we're not willing to continue to have those conversations and to look for those types of solutions.
Just a question, and you know, I know you might look at this in the future studies, but you know, utilities or relocation is always a huge concern with these types of projects. And you know, when I drive up and down the highway, the spacing of direct accesses to the highway is something that must have been grandfathered in over the years. I'm sure if we were to build highways today, they wouldn't be built that way. So one of the solutions is typically to consolidate accesses using service roads that run parallel to the highway. Now, given your right-of-way constraints, when you say everything is on the table, I hate to use the E word, but is expropriation on the table?
That is something that is done as a last resort, you know, in all honesty. But I think that that's not the first choice, I guess, when it comes to, and there's lots of opportunities to have discussions with residents and, you know, with yourselves before you need to necessarily go down, you know, that route. So, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I could gauge by your initial sigh that it's not an option you want to explore.
Well, I don't think it does anybody any. It's not good when it comes to relationships. And it really is something that we don't take very lightly. So it would warrant significant conversations. And it's really the only option on the table for us, and that the benefits outweigh the cons.
Yeah, and there might be simpler things that you could do now that could address some of the safety issues, like migrating to like a more a thermoplastic pavement markings with a higher reflectivity, which is kind of being done in some municipalities, or having more of the recessed reflective markings and things like that. So those are kind of more on the operational side, but yeah, I think between the ministry and the stakeholders, which would be the district of Sechelt would be one of those big stakeholders, I think we can come up with solutions together.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Will chime in? Okay, I had a question for Mr. Curry on the presentation with regards to the routes through Roberts Creek. You put up there a number of turning lane aspects of it too, but I wonder if it doesn't really address the Flume Road, Joe Road, Orange Road, Largo Road, where they are in that northbound transition onto the highway, turning left. The approaches are very steep, and I think sometimes that causes its own issues in itself. Was there any consideration to limit that access on the northbound side and drive it to intersections that are maybe more manageable in those situations?
I missed the very first part there of what intersection you were referring to.
Well, there's a number of intersections through Roberts Creek.
Through Roberts Creek, okay.
Yeah, so like Flume Road's a really good example, where it's a very steep access up to the highway level, and anybody that's turning left onto the highway or even right for that matter, either ends up spinning tires in the gravel, which limits their ability when they see their opening to get up on the highway. Now, understanding that turning left into a left turn lane or a middle lane before they access the driving lane helps a little bit, but of course the eastbound traffic is coming right at them.
We definitely did. Like, at Flume Road, for example, we actually were on our site reconnaissance with the ministry team. We were out there witnessing the bus turn left, and we were actually quite amazed that the bus could actually turn left. and so, but during our study, BC Transit changed the routing of the bus, so they weren't using that. And so we've kind of, we actually were looking at some options, and maybe these will come back on the table. But we did look at some options of down south of the highway, of having another connection so we could actually restrict access at Flume Road and bring it over to Marianne Road instead. And so those things, they were definitely discussed, and I think we kind of pulled them back a little bit at this point because the bus route did change. But we definitely did recognize that issue at a few locations, and especially at Flume Road, that it was quite obvious that the grades there really do affect vehicles turning onto the highway. So it's something that we'll just make a note to the ministry's team, that when those improvements do get kind of move forward, that potentially interior connection of the municipal roads be examined as a possible solution, as opposed to doing much work at Flume Road at the highway.
Perfect, thank you. Mayor Sigurds, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I think the conversation should be had with BC Transit, and particularly the transit people at the regional district around that. The reason that the bus was moved off Flume Road was because of safety concerns. And I know that the residents in the area and BC Transit and the transit on the Sunshine Coast would prefer that the route be up Flume Road. It leaves out a huge portion of the community and fairly steep and elderly population in there. So, before you kind of make a decision to do that, I think reach out to the other bodies to make sure that all the inputs had. And then I had a question. You mentioned the bypass study. What is the scope of that? Like, is that the whole Sunshine Coast? Does it start from Langdale and go to Half Moon Bay? Does it go, like, do you have any idea what the scope of that is at this point?
It's still being developed. So, but I'm wondering maybe as we develop that scope, it probably makes sense to engage with yourselves just to make sure that, you're aware of what the scope is and, it's covering the elements that you would like to see.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Anybody else want to jump in before I ask my last question? Okay, back to Mr. Curry. When you listed some of the statistics and it talked about the 7 fatalities, was there any analysis on those fatalities as to cause, or was it just an accident that had a fatality and that's where the number came from? Or did you look at extenuating circumstances?
We did look into all the incidents like that where the fatalities are occurring, and to see if there is the information that's recorded with each incident, what the causation may be or the contributing factors. And so each of these ones, I don't have things off the top of my head, but I don't think any one of them was standing out as any one particular issue. Like definitely fatalities do raise the critical nature of intersections. That's how they do get into our high priority list, I guess you could say. So when we look at the number of incidents that we have in any segment or at an intersection, when we look at severity comes into the index level, and so when we do have fatalities, it does really accelerate or move that priority of that intersection or segment up the list. So that's where, so some of those intersections that we have as higher priorities would be ones that would have potentially a fatality in there, and it become a more critical ones to address. But off the top of my head, I apologize, I don't have information about each particular one at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
And subsequent, I just would add, we did a little bit of analysis afterwards from the meeting we had with the regional district, and we did look at some recent data on the corridor in the around the southbound passing lane in the rural section, and we found that we looked at the latest data, and it did have some fatalities in there, but it wasn't related to at the end of the passing lane where an issue was raised, as whether people are speeding and coming to the end of the passing lane and having an incident. We found that where the fatality was and the incidents, they weren't located at the end of the passing lane.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Siegel.
Thank you. I just want to draw the attention to the people from Modi to one of the comments in the chat, is we have a couple of the regional district directors with us. They're watching as panelists or as attendees, sorry. And the comment is that Flume Road, this came from the chair, Flume Road is the preferred route for the bus, but the incline on Flume is not good for buses approaching Route 101. So, that will have to be taken into account as well. All right. Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah, we're very aware that the grade at Flume is it's a real challenge. Yeah.
All right, I think we've exhausted all the questions. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming and presenting to us, and it was very good, and we look forward to working in the future to keep moving things forward and increase the safety and all the good things for the coast. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All righty. So moving on, there's no new business, so we can move on to item 5.1, departmental operating budget overview and budget requests. So motion to accept the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? And I believe is it starting with Director Allen, or is Director Douglas facilitating?
I will come in and out as the meeting progresses, but we have Mr. Allen at first, and he'll be talking to us about the building inspection, bylaw enforcement, and development service. So, Mr. Allen.
Mr. Allen, Director Allen.
Yes, great, thank you. So yes, within the Planning and Development Division here at CSHOP, we do have the 3 departmental budget areas, as Director Douglas confirms: building inspection, bylaw enforcement, and what's formerly referred to or known as development services, but more commonly referred to simply as planning. So we've got planning and development overall, and then planning or development services is one of the 3 areas. So while we do have these 3 distinct areas, we do really fundamentally function as a singular team. with ongoing communication, cooperation. We do have the two managers, one for development services, one for building, and the bylaw enforcement serves to support all of it, both sides of that. So it's a relatively new and developing team. We've made great gains in the past year or two to come together, solidify our processes and practices. So we're really beginning to emerge with the consistent and high level of professional practice and public service. So today I'll be pleased to walk through the 2021 work plan and note how this relates to our budget planning. I can highlight key duties of these positions, identify proposed divisional staffing structure into the future, and then I'll pass it on to Director Douglas to speak a little bit more specifically on the financials. And then, of course, after that, we'd be pleased to take any questions and discussion. But if I may, before starting on that, a quick word on 2020, because it is relevant here. In spite of the pandemic, the development throughout the year remained extremely strong. That was our primary focus. So despite challenges that the working remote environment provided, we made a number of progress on files all across the board, big, small, everything. So it really was all hands on deck in terms of carrying on. We had reports on virtually every council agenda, always full workload. So I was very proud of that as a director to see this team come together and carry on and continue to perform. And not only that, our whole organization and including planning and development, we played a key role in the Regional Emergency Operations Center that we spent several weeks on in the spring of 2020, collaborating with other jurisdictions on the coast and so forth. So lots of good things, but as a result of that and a result of the overall strong economy, where we did perhaps not make as much progress as we would have liked to have been on key policy projects. For example, it was into the fall before we really got to dig into the zoning bylaw. And you may remember November of 2019, we were talking about really diving into that January through March of 2020. So we are there, we're moving forward, but there's a few other things, community amenity policy, for example, that continues to sort of bump down the line a little bit. But I'm sharing this because what's this resulted in is this exceptionally large work plan that we have in front of us, which frankly is what's on our plate, but admittedly more than we can likely do this year. And we spent a lot of our time focusing on the responsiveness, the community and public service and responsiveness, but we can see what we've been seeing recently. There's a whole lot of longer range, higher level planning, growth management, urban containments and so forth that we really would like to focus on at some point as well. So I will just share my screen here and run through a brief presentation. Let's go with this one. Okay. So starting with key policy projects in our work plan. So the zoning bylaw, this touches back to 2020, which of course council is aware. We did a fair amount of engagement through September through December. We're presently writing the bylaw as we speak. It's an ongoing effort that takes all hands on deck. And then the next step would be the additional consultation, a technical review, referrals, and so forth once council has an opportunity to view it. Additional policy projects, the community amenity contribution policy. Ideally, we get onto that in the first half of this year. And there's refinements, there's ideas that have been presented in the housing needs assessment reports, which are quite interesting to us, inclusionary zoning, density bonusing, and so forth. There's a lot of tools out there, a lot of opportunities that we can pursue here to both build our community, increase our affordable housing stock, build up reserves, and so forth. So there's really a key opportunity here to make some grounds this year. The official community plan review. This, of course, has been on the work plan for 2 or 3 years. We have committed to focusing on the zoning bylaw one thing at a time, but forecasting towards later in the year where we can really start getting into background study, research. We certainly have some areas in mind where we know there can be an improvement. The plan is good, but it could be modernized, it could be improved. So that certainly remains in scope. And some of the key areas of review, of course, the downtown area. The OCP indicates downtown first. We absolutely support that in our actions and so forth. Development permit areas. Some of the development permit areas have good content, but are a little bit hard to identify what the key objectives are and can certainly be improved. Climate adaptation. I think we've seen a number of grant opportunities out in the last few months, and planning for projects relating to climate adaptation can put us into position to qualify and receive grants. We've received some feedback, certainly from the East Porpoise Bay Community Association, that perhaps the land use designation of the working waterfront is something that could be looked into. Relating to the community amenity policy, a density bonus provisions of the OCP could use some clarity and some work. Presently in front of you and out for referrals now is the road naming policy. That's interesting. It's a good one to make some headway on. We're refining our development permit process and our landscaping, how much security and for how long and how inspections occur, as well as how we document and maintain that money to ensure that when we receive security, it can be returned to the appropriate parties at the right time. Other bylaws that have been started and have been paused for the time being include tree cutting bylaw, a sign bylaw, possibly mobile vending that may potentially be wrapped into a special events bylaw as well. We've talked about various options. So these remain, they're not our number one priority right now, but we recognize that these are areas where progress needs to be made. We're also doing engagement and planning for transportation initiatives. Planning is helping out, just getting started on the transportation master plan, and the COVID Relief Fund grant that we applied for last month and hopeful to get will certainly overlap with engineering and planning, and there's lots of work we can do to support that. Of course, we adopted step code level 1, amended our building bylaw, and we'll be looking towards step code level 2 at the moment. Our chief building official has joined us with fresh eyes, has made a number of recommendations for enhancing our building bylaw, and that's underway. So you'll be seeing that at some point this year. And then our software and our management, on-base document management, planning and development really needs to catch up, take part of that. CityWorks integration, we can move in towards the potential for e-permitting for building permits and so forth to expedite our process, smoothen our delivery. But that first part was all the policy projects, but we also have a number of development applications, and undoubtedly there's some that I don't have on my list that we will be spending time on this year, and they just haven't emerged or come to the forefront yet. But I think council is certainly aware of the ones here on this list. The Grand Excelsior is a large application west of Wakefield Road. Our progress to date has been slow, but it is something we are working towards. The community services, we're post-public hearing, Trellis, Green Court. These are all moving towards this year, towards building permit and so forth. So we will see some significant complex buildings, which are referred to as Part 3 buildings, come forward this year. And we're presently well suited in the building department. Extremely fortunate to have a well-qualified chief building official who is both a level 3 building official as well as level 2 plumbing official. And in fact, there's only 23 of those folks in the province with the maximum qualification. So as we move forward with a number of Part 3 complex buildings, at present, we're in good stead. But we are looking towards the future and constantly planning what we might want and need to keep up. So the applications I ran through are many that are on file now at various states of early to late, but we're also forecasting some other applications that are certainly on the horizon. And this is by no means an exhaustive list, because some of them are very much pre-application, and sometimes pre-application, it's a little bit, sensitive in terms of information released, because we don't know for sure if they will happen. Pardon me, wrong way. But we've had some great discussions about a potential rental building on Ebb Tide, which would be certainly in the downtown core and well needed. There's the hotels, potentially reinvigorating hotel developments at Blue Ocean, Vanta Pacific. The Evolve development in Wilson Creek is something that could move forward this year potentially. Silverstone Heights Phase 3, the owners of Silverstone Heights here at the top of Cowrie and Derby have great ambitious plans that we will be looking forward to further discussions. And then of course, Trailway Properties, there's been a couple of new facilities recently on the mall property and potential of more to come. And these are key properties in our downtown area that will be seeing a lot of our time devoted to this year. Now, in bylaw enforcement, so bylaw enforcement itself doesn't drive a work plan similar to planning and development and building, but they do provide us the support that we need. I think whenever we do engagement for zoning bylaws, one of the key comments we get is make sure you can enforce it. And enforcement's a challenge. And I think we made some gains later in 2020 when we amended the Ben's bylaw to provide a little more flexibility for how we can enforce and collect fines and so forth. But their key areas of operations are parking and traffic. That's where they get the highest amount of complaints and tickets, noise, dog control, and homeless concerns, particularly in the downtown core. And council will know that one of our long tenured bylaw officers took a new position with our CMP at the end of 2020, and we've recently recruited a new bylaw officer who joins us from the Public Works Division. So somebody internally, which is a great success for all of us as a team to be able to bring in somebody to this team that's presently within the district Sechelt staffing. So we are pleased about that, and he's getting trained and catching up quickly here on his first week on the job. Now also consultant support. Some of these we do need help with and are ongoing. For example, we do have a consultant planner who's providing us a background analysis on the Grand Excelsior development and how we might recommend to council to move forward on that. We have discussed the possibility of a short-term rental bylaw. So the zoning bylaw can determine which zones short-term rentals can take place in, get into some of the details such as parcel size, number of guests, etc. I think what we hear a lot is that people want us to regulate more than land use, but the behavior of operators or guests. And we would suggest that should we go that route, that would be more than zoning bylaw. That would be something that might potentially be a bylaw unto its own. And although I did mention the community plan, that would be something when we're ready to move forward would contain consultant support as well. Oops, pardon me. So I'll also talk about our staffing, our focus, and our needs, areas of focus for each of the positions here, and I'll run through that briefly. So our development planning manager is also our subdivision approving officer. So he oversees and approves subdivisions, takes care of major rezonings. He oversees the inquiries and the workflow of the planners. Is a key participant in the zoning bylaw update. Particularly with subdivisions, maintains a close contact with engineering department to improve our processes and so forth, as well as the related development approval conditions that come along with that. Then we have a community planner. Community planner looks at transportation engagement, downtown issues such as the patios and streetscapes, street name policies, working on our development policies and procedures. Still takes on development applications when needed. We'll be looking at the special events and mobile vending, tree cutting. Also a member of the team helping out with the zoning bylaw update. And then we have our planner 2. Our planner 2 also takes on rezoning applications, some of the larger complicated files, subdivisions, our development permits for commercial, industrial, some of the little more of the complex development permits, the ones will come forward to council. also a key contributor to zoning bylaw. And then our planning technician role is the front line for counter inquiries, phone inquiries, building permit reviews for zoning compliance, the development permits for geotechnical and so forth, sign permits. It's a position that is very busy and takes a large workload, a large volume, particularly of the emails, that when somebody is looking for assistance but doesn't have an application on file yet or is submitting a query, it often goes through to the planning technician. And as noted, our chief building official, level 3 building official, level 2 plumbing, he's overseeing the department now in terms of managing and overseeing inspections, customer service, receipt of applications, policy development in terms of the bylaw, implementation, and moving towards step code level 2. And so that really, the addition of that position has been already in the 4 weeks, an incredible addition. It allows our building inspectors really to spend more time on site, really thoroughly conducting inspections, business license inspections, building permits, and so forth, and has really leveled out that area of our department. And at one point a month ago, I think we had 30 plus building permits in the queue that had not yet been looked at, just simply due to lack of resources, and we've cut that by 2/3. And so things are going well, but as we forecast for these larger Part 3 complex buildings coming our way, it's something for us to be mindful of. And then our bylaw officers, of course, they enforce bylaws. They work closely with Public Works and our CMP, but more than enforcement, they do play a community liaison role. A lot of what they're doing isn't actually an infraction of our bylaw, particularly as it comes to some of our issues with folks downtown. But they really play a good ambassador role, and it's a key role for our team to support both building without permits, zoning infractions, and then parking, traffic, and other downtown items. And then, of course, tying it all together, the key part of our team is our planning office assistant, and she's there to support all of us in planning development, is the key link with our advisory planning commission in terms of establishing agendas, taking minutes, communicating for us, conducting our advertising for public hearings and statutory notices and whatnot, preparing quarterly reports, work plans, and so forth. So that's our team. Now, part of what you've been hearing from various presentations to date is looking at what are our needs? What are we looking for here to continue on providing a high level of service? So as noted, 2020 was quite busy, and I see more continuation along the lines in 2021. So there are a couple of suggestions that we have here. We do have a part-time casual building technical resource expert who helps with everything from preparing notice on title reports to managing expiring permits, follow-up, and so forth, and provides a key resource to our building department. So we have a very small amount of flexibility right now to carry on with this, and there's a possibility, and Director Douglas can speak on this a little bit further, there's a possibility that funding from building permit revenues can help support here. And then the development planner. So I see here potentially revising the planner 2 role and creating a senior development planner and deputy approving officer role, and then bringing on what's known as a development planner. And a development planner is a more of an entry level position, but it allows both the approving officer and the planner to move away from the basic subdivisions, the 1, 2, 3 lot subdivisions, and really allows to build that part of our department where we're all scrambling to fill that piece. And then it allows for that planner to grow and take on larger, more complex applications. And so it does feel like we're often trying to plug holes, have community planner take on development applications, have a manager take on development applications, and so forth. So that would be my suggestion there, that we could really benefit from the ability to have more folks working on the development end of things. And really that's our front line. That's where we provide our customer service, provide efficient response times. And, you know, in an economy, a real estate economy like this one, when properties are selling quickly and people want quick turnaround, quick advice, quick confirmation from us, I think it's important that we maintain this level of service. And then we also have put together an operational roadmap for the next few years. So looking at this, so we have the ones in yellow are proposed, and I neglected to note that we have had some interest in folks working as casual building officials to pick up some work when we really the demand increases. And so the orange would be the director here, the green is the management position, and then the blue are staff in place, and then the yellow would be the suggestion. So here we have clerical technical support, casual building official, development planner. This would be in 2021 for this year. Then as we move into the future, I'm continuing to see this need to almost create two parts of the building department where we've got the current planning, the responsive customer service planning, and then bringing in potentially a manager of long range planning or shifting focuses within where we can really take stock and say, look, our official community plan, climate change, housing policies are important to us, and we want to have equal time for both. So I would say right now we're doing a lot of our planning at a smaller level, but we know we need to look at our growth management and so forth and take that bigger picture. And so forecasting out, I can see the need to increase that capacity that we have. So that's a suggestion for 2022 at this point. Of course, we will be reporting back in a year from now or 10 months from now on how things went this year and see where our priorities lie. And then 2023, potentially as we grow, we have more bylaws, more people and so forth. Let's keep an eye on the fact that we may possibly at some point need an additional bylaw officer for a third bylaw. And so we will watch that for the time being. And just want to bring this forward as something that is certainly potential for the future. So I will conclude here and say that these suggestion additions can increase our customer service, provide the needed assistance with subdivisions, rezoning applications, and enable the development planning manager and the senior development planner to make progress on larger developments, the Silverstone Heights Phase 3, the Grand Excelsior developments, and so forth. Provides a view for us of the future where we can focus equally on the development and the policy planning and have these two branches of the planning area. And I can say that we're trying to do both of these right now at the same time. And sometimes I wonder, frankly, if we have the complement to do one, let alone both. And I can tell you we're working hard. We're working lots of hours. Council's getting great value out of our team, and we're pleased to provide that. But we're looking here now for an eye to the future as well, and do recommend a modest increase this year to carry on to meet our objectives, and then continue to forecast and find what the right size for this department is, recognizing that Sechelt, while has traditionally been a small town, we can feel it taking the next step, becoming bigger, and help us achieve our goals of achieving council strategic plan goals and so forth, and build both a better organization and a better Sechelt as well. So it will be our pleasure to continue doing that, and we're happy to contribute and play a part in achieving council objectives. And so with that, I thank you, and I will advance to the next slide, which are financial slides. Director Douglas can take it from here for the next 2 or 3 slides, and then we'll be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Allen. So just to review briefly this budget area, you see that there's an increase to salaries and benefits, and that's the lift to having a chief building official for 2021. Rightly or wrongly, when we were pushing this, when we were trying to get this through with council in last year, we had budgeted, we had planned to use the budget for the part-time staff to help fund this position. And we thought we would wait for the chief building official to come and then talk about what the needs were needed. And that's all happened. And so through that whole process, you know, it is determined that it would be nice to have it's important to have the clerical staff continue. So that's why that's back on in the yellow boxes in our organizational chart. Other than that, you see that there's, and that's not included here, that's just the ask, and it'll come through the one time only, the clerical staff. And the other big change here would be that we're expecting higher revenues this year. We budgeted 200,000 last year, and we achieved greater than that. And so we're budgeting 250,000 this year. So that's really the kind of the main changes there to that budget. If you want to go to the next slide. So under bylaw enforcement here, really, you have minimal changes, a little bit of salary and benefits, and a little bit of professional development. Once again, professional development will be reviewed final time before the final draft to council, just to evaluate whether the planned in-person ones, training or the conferences are going to be virtual or not. The other change here would be to revenues. We've decreased revenues to fines by 5,000. We had budgeted about 8 last year, and we achieved 3. So we need to make these minor adjustments as they show. So that's the only changes there, or the main changes there. Development services. So development services here, yeah, no, there's no new people in this. It's just an increase due to contractual agreements and salaries and benefits. Couple of minor changes, contracted services, a little increase to professional development. And then on the revenue side, you know, a bit small increase to licenses, permits, and fees, 15,000, and just we only have one grant revenue number of 10 grand there this year. So, and that's for I can't remember what project that was, but so not really much of a change here either. So yeah, any questions? Sorry.
Thank you. Any questions to council? Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. I know that we have the community pushing for a short-term rental bylaw. And as you indicated, if we're putting a bylaw in place, we need to ensure that we can do the enforcement around that. So I see the additional bylaw officer in 2023. Should the short-term rental bylaw be put in place, that we're going to need that support. Other communities that have put short-term rental bylaws in place find that if they're structured correctly, they actually will help cover off some of the cost of the additional staffing required for the enforcement. So I understand where you're coming with that, you know, and what would be required. So thank you for that.
Councilor McLean.
Yeah, just another comment on bylaw. I noted that parking and traffic are the major complaint sources for bylaw. And of course, I don't have in front of me when those are reported, but I would assume that those would be centralized around the weekends when we do have much higher traffic due to tourism. However, we don't have bylaw coverage on the weekends. So is there a bit of a mismatch when we have the greatest complaints versus when we have coverage?
Well, that's an excellent question, and potentially, yes. I know that sometimes we'll get a complaint on a Monday morning about something that did occur over the weekend, and bylaw officers are able to investigate and take action as soon as the Monday or Tuesday. Of course, the summertime being the busy area downtown, but I think when you take a look around, it seems, in spite of even being in a pandemic, it seemed like it was quite busy throughout the whole year. So there's a lot of parking, or pardon me, there's a lot of traffic coming through town and so forth, and just simply cars and the impact of vehicles that have on the community and on pedestrians and other businesses and whatnot. It just, by nature, is a heavy impact, and so that's something that we hear about quite often. Whether or not there should be 2-hour parking or parking for the adjacent retailers only, so forth, right? So it's more than just enforcement and ticketing. It's really quite a bigger issue, and something we've struggled with, certainly with the zoning bylaw, and it's become clear that we probably do need, particularly in the downtown area, to really professionally examine our parking and traffic needs.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else? Mayor Segers.
Thank you. I know the workload that you have, as you've laid out here, is big. To put it mildly, it's big. And when you talk about Grand Excelsior, for example, for many of the people in the community, they may not be aware of what that is. That's 300 acres, is it not?
Yeah, it's in that range. It's a grouping of 3 large properties and 1 smaller one, but it's a large amount of land. Yeah.
Yes. So the conversation that you're talking about, having somebody who can actually do that future planning, is going to become critical as we deal with Ministry of Transport, for example, who were here earlier. How do we deal with the roads and those structures? How do we deal with sewer provision and making sure that our active transportation systems are built appropriately, and that we're not reacting continually. We're actually being proactive in putting together the framework for the community that the community wants, and that those coming in have some clarity around, so we actually develop and build out the community the way the community wants it to be, so that we retain the atmosphere, just that we have the Sea Shot we want, and not that we're continually having to react because we haven't had that time to do that pre-planning. So I understand where you're coming from with that, and the documentation, the policy work that you've indicated for this year. We all know that some of that policy work has been sitting there for a while, and development takes priority because that brings the dollars in. But the policy work is critical to lay that foundation. So both have to happen. So thank you for laying all that out. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for listening. And it can be, when you look at the whole package, it can be almost an overwhelming thought of what's out there. But certainly we have a lot of interesting work to keep staff engaged and keep them busy. And I mean it sincerely. We're pleased to do so. Each one of us enjoys our job, and we're building our team, and good things are happening. But and I did note also, I mean it sincerely, there's all kinds of development applications we'll be working on that we have not yet seen, have not yet come our way, or weren't quite yet ready to be elevated to presentation. But yeah, the plate is full, absolutely.
Councilor McLean.
Yeah, so given that the plate is quite full, there were 2 projects that you mentioned in the work plan that I don't, I think are just coming up now that I'd like a little more detail on. And those would be the Transportation Master Plan review and the Building Bylaw review. So just briefly, could you go into detail about, or not into detail, briefly, what we're looking to achieve with those two?
You bet. I'll start with the building bylaw. So that has been something that there was money in the budget for the last couple of years, a modest amount, I think $4,000 to $5,000 to hire a consultant to modernize building bylaw 409. So it is in part due to the impending changes of the STEP code and the Building Act and so forth. So there's just areas of improvement we can look at, respecting fees, building permit costs, how costs can offset development, for example, STEP code items, sprinkling, so forth. And yeah, we've got a list, and our chief building official, Mr. Nias, joined us 3 or 4 weeks ago and has great ideas, expertise in the field, and we'll be sharing that with council as we move forward. So it is frankly something that's been on the books for a couple of years. Now, the Transportation Master Plan will be led by engineering, and Director Dillon may wish to chip in as well. But really, I mean, it ranges from the higher level, what are our road classifications? Where are we seeking as West Sechelt connects to Sechelt, the key corridors, through down to active transportation. And I think that's where our community planner can play a key role. So she'll be supporting one of our managers of engineering on this project for both engagement, local knowledge, corporate knowledge, bringing together our official community plan and other plans and strategies to ensure we provide a coordinated step forward.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody? Oh, Councilor McLean, follow up.
Yeah, well, it's a separate question. Going to finance. So looking at the budget for development services, there is a $80,000 transfer from reserves. Is this our development equalization reserve? So the one that we kind of fund when we're low development and take away when we're high or other way around?
Just give me 1 second and I'll look it up here. I believe it is so the 80,000 there is from committed expenditures. So we haven't done the review of transfers from fee equalization yet. So that will come as we go forward. So what is included in his expenses is about 80 grand covered by grants.
Okay, I see.
Okay, anybody else? All right, I think Director Dillon's up next.
Thank you, Director Allen.
Welcome, thank you.
Hello. I will share my screen now. And it's not easy to follow Director Allen, I might add. So I'll try my best though.
Those were some really nice background pictures.
Yeah, they sure were. Okay, so you should be seeing my presentation now. Yes?
Yes. Yeah, we can.
Excellent. Yeah, so today I'm going to talk about the engineering and operations division, long-term vision, and our 2020 operating budget with the additional staff requests, and there'll be some numbers at the end that Director Douglas will speak about. Just on the outset here, I'd like to say that engineering and planning are getting more and more integrated. It's been very good to work with Director Allen. You'll see a little bit of the things in engineering that you saw in Director Allen's presentation, which is a good thing. We should be working together to the extent possible. So with that, I'll get right into it. So I just wanted to talk about, let's fast forward in a time machine and go to the year 2025 and hopefully what the things we would like to see in Sechelt by then. So Sechelt, rather than having a low active transportation score, is one of the best active transportation communities in the province. We've leveraged grant funding and created a very comprehensive network of active transportation that our citizens enjoy. We have better regional connectivity because we have expanded the runway at the airport, and now we can entertain some flights that we couldn't before. Our reclaimed wastewater facility is functioning at peak optimal capacity, and there are opportunities for residents to use the reclaimed wastewater that we produce. Development is, in terms of engineering approval, is more streamlined now, and there's more clear processes in place, and Sechelt is attracting very good developers that are building sustainable developments in our community. We're adopting more of the green infrastructure principles and seeing how we can incorporate those into our infrastructure projects. We are looking at using more sustainable landscaping that is native to the area and is easy to maintain and doesn't require a lot of water. And we have a great and improved parks and trails network. And so this is just some of the things that could happen in this long-term vision. In terms of our infrastructure renewal and the investment strategy, we had an old sustainability gap that was quite large, and through cost containment and increasing revenue, we have closed that sustainability gap with our infrastructure and brought it down to half. Some of our cost containment strategies we're looking at are relining our buried infrastructure with cured in place pipe lining, doing a crack sealing program to extend the longevity of our pavement assets, and also looking at building retrofits to see how we can reduce our energy consumption with our current stock of buildings. Some of the revenue strategies we are exploring would be a review of our DCCs and how they're structured. Improved grant writing skills. We're already pretty good, but we can always improve. Looking at densification and infills to create more of a sustainable footprint for our community, and our partners in the planning division will be very important with that. Streamlining development, having the right type of density of development to fund our infrastructure. Restructuring sanitary sewer user rates, we would look at those. And also some municipalities are moving towards stormwater utility user fees, which is something we might want to look at as a way to generate revenues. So the next few slides are on the 2021 strategic action plan for the division. And this is going to touch on the totality of what we do and the various things that services we want to provide to residents of Sechelt, things that probably should have been done in the past that we're progressing now, and things that we will be. So in development engineering, just a quick primer on what it is. It's how the district oversees and approves the design and construction of new private sector development projects. And the division priorities are to streamline engineering approval and inspection processes, work with planning to create development process flowcharts to give more clarity to the development community, and have a complete and comprehensive review of Bylaw 430 that controls subdivisions and developments. Wastewater, this is going to be the longest list of priorities, and the reason why we have We do have a new engineer in place to help us champion a lot of these initiatives, and we hope to hire more resources. We are right now out for a Class 4 operator to help with the Water Resource Center, and that was missing. So with wastewater, it's how the district collects and treats wastewater to return to the environment as clean water. And our priorities are to provide a recommendation to council about the liquid waste management plan and whether we should go forward with that or we should pursue something under the municipal wastewater regulation. Apply for funding opportunities to fund studies for the Water Resource Center in terms of optimization and asset management. Issue request for proposals for the Water Resource Center process audit, benchmarking, and optimization report. Hopefully we can do that by the end of the year. We want to prepare a request for proposal for Water Resources Facility Master Plan and Asset Management Plan for posting in the subsequent year. Complete final site selection and detailed design for a municipal RV sani station with hopefully approval from the province for funding on that. We do need to build a chemical storage facility for the Water Resource Center. We have a plan for the expansion of the sanitary collection to unserviced areas, and we want to keep on developing those plans. We have some functional plans in place. And issue a tender for camera inspection and condition assessment of all district sanitary and storm sewer assets. And still continuing with wastewater, we want to model and monitor our sanitary collection system to quantify our infiltration and inflows. We have to look at our sewer outfall and do some consultation and design around the upgrades to that. Wakefield lift station replacement, we have a grant funding opportunity outstanding that we're waiting for an answer on, but regardless, it still needs work. We would like to go towards SCADA, which SCADA is short for system control and data acquisition, which allows us to be more responsive to issues that happen with our collection and treatment system and do remote monitoring. And we also would like to issue a request for proposals for the Dusty Road Septic Facility and the feasibility of relocating that. Solid waste management. What is it? It's how the district collects solid waste for disposal and recycling at permitted facilities. And in terms of priorities, we just like to improve on our compost collection. Overland drainage, hydrogeology, and natural assets. So this one has a little bit of a longer explanation, but it's how the district ensures that urban development does not impede the flow of natural surface water and groundwater to wetlands, streams, and other water bodies. Also to ensure that surface water and groundwater do not flow to unintended locations that result in property damage. And this is also known as stormwater management. So you'll hear this general stuff called stormwater management in other settings. And so we'd like to explore grant funding opportunities to conduct more detailed and extensive LiDAR surveys to really define at a granular level where the overland flow paths are. Water conservation is certainly a big topic in this area. And this little graphic here just shows all the different types of, how you go from raw water to potable water, wastewater, and recycled water, and also clean water. So it's complicated and there's a lot of moving parts if you dissect it. So I just thought that was a fun little graphic to include. And what is it? It's how the district reuses treated wastewater and promotes reduced potable water usage and increases the use of stormwater for non-potable purposes. And two of the priorities for us is to conduct a reclaimed water feasibility study, which we have funding for, and we've selected a consultant for that. Kerwood Lydell will be leading the work, initial work on that. and we want to prepare a council report at some point in the year to present options on gray water usage and best practices and recommendations, and definitely something we would need to coordinate with planning and our new chief building officer. Active transportation is also a big area that we are focusing on. I see some smiles, obviously. Council remembers this wonderful day. So what is it? It's how the district promotes active modes of transportation such as cycling and walking within the district and builds infrastructure to facilitate its use. And you're seeing some of that right now on Trail Avenue. And so the division priorities in that is to complete the Sun Coaster Trail Phase 2. We would like to issue an RFP for design and public consultation for the East Porpoise Bay Esplanade project, which is a big one and requires a lot of planning. So we'd like to start moving in that direction with some engagement to just define the parameters of what we're doing and how we're going to do it. We need to do some of the more mundane things that haven't happened in recent years, like sidewalk inspections. Director Allen did make reference to this in his presentation, but another big thing we want to work on is the transportation master plan, which we are doing in concert with planning, and Megan is heading that up. Also in active transportation, a pedestrian controlled crosswalk at Derby and Norwest Bay Road. We have a Bike BC grant in place to do bike lanes on Reef Road, Shoalway, and Lighthouse Avenue. We will be coordinating with MOTI for Highway 101 sidewalk, and we had an excellent presentation from them today, and hopefully solidified some connections with MOTI to work together and have this project completed. And then we also want to initiate construction if we are successful with our COVID-19 Resilience Stream Active Transportation Project submission that we submitted earlier, just before the end of the year. Green infrastructure is another area that we want to work on, and what is it? It's how the district can design and build new infrastructure to reduce stormwater runoff, use sustainable construction materials, build infrastructure in a way that reduces the carbon footprint of construction, and reduce some of the adverse impacts of urban development, such as the heat island effect. So green infrastructure is about all those types of things. And since this is kind of an early concept for the district, we are just at the exploratory stage with this, and we're just going to lay out some green infrastructure initiatives to explore for the next year, hopefully when we have more resources to look at that. Major municipal construction. What is it? It's how the district addresses infrastructure renewal in a way that multiple asset classes are renewed within the scope of one major project. This reduces costs and disruptions to road users to have your roads done at the same time that you do your sanitary and stormwater infrastructure to group projects together in that way. Division priorities for that area would be to implement and improve project management framework that includes stakeholder engagement and risk mitigation that's in line with previous reports that we've received. And we would like to hopefully, and as the vaccines roll out, we can do some more face-to-face direct engagement with citizens and have more fun community events around what we do on the construction side. And we'd like to issue a request for proposal for a comprehensive archaeological assessment of Sechelt to guide future work. So there's not the level of uncertainty that we have right now when we go into these types of projects. Along those lines, we'd hope to take that information and convert it to a standard operating procedure. We do want to finish the Trail Avenue construction. If we get awarded phase 2 of that, then obviously that would continue into the next year. But the stuff we have opened up now, we want to have completed. I'm very optimistic for July. June would be even better. We need to design a Marineway retaining wall solution, which was something that was identified. And then pending the approval of the AAP, a major project for municipal construction would be the operations building. So downtown infrastructure revitalization, something that's near and dear to many in the community. And it's how the district renews and revitalizes base infrastructure in the core commercial area to create the conditions for a vibrant and commercially successful downtown. And we have several initiatives that we want to advance in 2021, complete the Wharf Avenue Improvement Project, begin conceptual planning and engagement and design for the Trail Bay Boulevard improvements, start moving along the road to planning our next major project downtown, which is the Inlet Avenue upgrades. So those are some important downtown revitalization projects. Pavement management, it's the way we maintain and rehabilitate our pavement assets to keep them at desired service levels. In 2021, we want to issue a request for proposal for a condition assessment of roads so that we know what condition they currently are in and what we need to do to keep them at the desired service levels. And then there'll be a 2021 payment overlay program. Sanitary and storm sewer renewal. It's the way we rehabilitate and maintain our sanitary and storm sewer assets. And one of the things I want to look at it for 2021 is to start on the road to doing the cured in place pipe lining to extend the life of these assets. And I've done some discussions with SCRD and the town of Gibson to see if we can jointly create an economy of scale to have some of this type of work done. The airport, it's how we maintain and improve the airport and how it services the community. And we're successful in, we just completed the award of the construction project to Jake's Construction. So we want to complete that airport runway expansion project this year, and also see if we need to think about a master plan. Bridges, culverts, and wharfs. It's how we maintain and rehabilitate existing structures in and over water bodies and plan for the construction new structures that interact with water bodies. And so this year we want to do structural inspections of wharves, complete the Wakefield Road culvert replacement, and also complete design and construction of the Cook Creek culvert replacement. Street lighting. It's balancing the need for safety with the residents' desire for reduced light pollution. So that's a challenge there. There's obviously requirements for safety, but at the same time, our residents do desire dark skies, and so balancing those two can be challenging. But we have solutions to that, and so for this year, we're looking at just working with BC Hydro on continuing the LED streetlight replacement program. And now, so that covers off the stuff on the engineering side. There's a lot there. And so I can pause for a break for questions. Now might be a good time, or I can continue on and go through operations.
Yeah, we can check. Oh, Councillor Toth has a question.
Thank you, Chair. I had originally written down the Wakefield Road Culvert project as one that I know has been sort of a long-running issue that we have yet to take on, but you answered that in your presentation, so I'm good. With the WRC, glad to see the chemical storage facility being recognized as a priority. It's been sort of left on the side for too long. We definitely need it. I'm just wondering, also looking at the WRC, planning for possible expansion of that facility someday, particularly so we can have, a project in place ready if a grant opportunity comes available. I'm just wondering if that's work that would proceed as part of a facilities master plan, or if that's work that can be sort of done on its own.
Yes, Your Worship, answer Councillor Todd's question. The facilities master plan is the plan to expand the requirements to expand the water resource center, so it would definitely look at that. We did have that slated for subsequent years. We have to do some legwork to get there first. There might be intervening events though that will require us to speed that up, and we're fully in recognition of that. I think once you look at the totality of my presentation today, you might be able to appreciate that we have a lot on our plate, and so we would have to, either leverage consultants or hire a few more bodies to try and move some of these things quicker, or shift priorities. So some of the things that we have prioritized for this year, we might have to move off to a subsequent year if we want to pursue that more quickly.
Okay, anybody else before we move on? Seeing no hands, I guess we can continue on, Director Dillon.
Okay, thank you. So we're into the operations, public works operations. What is it? It's how the district maintains roads, drainage, utilities, and district-owned buildings in response to issues or emergencies situations involving these assets. And so for 2021, we want to improve the ditches to prevent shoulder erosion on Seashell Inlet Road. I know this is something that a lot of people in Sandy Hook and up that way have voiced a concern. So we want to look at solutions on how to address that. Through COVID-19 money, and I have to get confirmation from Director Douglas on this, but it would be good to have 2 variable message board signs that we can deploy throughout the district to advise people of detours for traffic or for construction or community events that might be happening. These would be good assets to have, and they can also, some of them are able to track speed, so they can be deployed in school zones at the start of the school year to remind people to slow down. We'd also want the Public Works department to work with engineering to define and implement a roadside vegetation control program. So there's some opportunities to team up with the province to maybe get some of this stuff done free as training for the crews that fight wildfires. So we've been trying to get some of that mapped. Additional priorities would be to establish a yearly pavement marking program to make sure that we're on top of our lines that need to be painted. We can start looking at some of the durable pavement markings that don't fade away. They're a little bit more expensive than thermoplastics, but in key locations and for key things, they might provide additional value to have those in place instead of your usual paint. I would like to develop a yearly crack sealing program to increase the longevity of our pavement assets. Other things that I would like to explore would be doing a yearly road sweeping program just to make sure that some of the debris in our gutters are not going into our storm sewers and clogging them, and so they're flowing properly. Have a proper culvert cleaning program, and then we're having our public works staff deal more with these breaks in our collection system as it is getting older. So we will need to invest in some staff training so that they can do some more of those repairs and hopefully develop the capacity to do some of that in-house. We would like to implement a storm sewer flushing program to make sure there's not clogs and issues with our storm sewers. And then we do have a ongoing issue with the roof leaking at the RCMP. Parks and trails operations. It's how the district maintains, operates our parks, trails, sports facilities, beach accesses, and many other things there that would be too numerous to list, but those are some of the main ones. And some of these get tracked under our active transportation portfolio, but here's some of the main priorities for parks is to complete a asset inventory for all the parks assets and using our parks collector application. Excuse me, we do have a soil stockpile in Hackett Park and we're going to try and use that for a natural amphitheater feature. We do want to complete the Hackett Park community gathering place and stage. We have funding for that, as well as get the Eptide Dog Park up and running as soon as possible, no later than summer. And additional priorities for parks and trails would be to provide a recommendation to engineering for low maintenance landscaping standards to conserve water. We want to look at how we can improve our sports fields to maybe attract more sports tournaments once we get past this pandemic. And we're currently in the process of looking at some graffiti proofing options for our washrooms and other facilities, because that has become a problem recently. And then additionally, we want to upgrade the playground equipment, and we're looking at the adult fitness equipment. So we have some funding in place for that. I mentioned this before, but completing phase 2 of the Suncoaster Trail is very important. We'd like to develop consistent standards for outdoor furnishings, such as benches, tables, and other things. Right now, we're talking with SCRD on doing memoranda of understanding to share equipment. So we have an overseeder and they have an aerator, or vice versa. We can share those pieces of equipment. And also, I'd like to conduct some leak assessment work on our irrigation system, just to make sure that we're not losing water through our irrigation systems. And finally, wastewater operations. And a lot of this I covered off under the engineering side with wastewater, but some of the more operational issues. So first of all, this is more about the operation and maintenance of those facilities. And some of the priorities there would be, we use a lot of drinking water at the WRC. It was brought to my attention early on in my tenure here that we're one of the biggest users of drinking water. So we want to see how we can address that. We want to develop more informative material to engage public, let them know what's happening at the Water Resource Center. We started doing some of that this year with sharing videos of the cleaning of the FBR tanks. I gave quite a comprehensive presentation about the sanitary system earlier in the year. So we're trying to get the message out, and we want to create more and more training opportunities for staff. So we've had some staff that have upgraded from level 1 operators to level 2, and we've had some great training events happen. And then some of the other ones are working with engineering to address our issues with the filters and bypassing the filters. We want to improve a system to monitor lift stations, and this is about SCADA and having that remote controllability. Having some standard operating procedures around lift station callouts and service breaks, and making sure that between public works and wastewater, they're doing the right things at the right time. And then also working with engineering to develop strategies to use our reclaimed water. And we've started with our first step, and we've awarded the contract to complete the reclaimed water feasibility study. And so this is a self-flattering photo of myself, but I do have some priorities too. It's not just about the staff. So I just did summarize that in terms of a table. And my stuff is more at a high level, but some of the things I would like to do is just recruit an asset management technician. That's pretty high on my list. I'm working on revising some job descriptions, presenting yearly departmental action plans, which is what today is all about. You know, and I'm here to support the whole division. I've started holding quarterly, they were initially supposed to be quarterly meetings with the engineering operations people at SCRD, the town of Gibsons, and SIGD, but they, due to popular requests, they want to have them once every 2 months. So those are going to be interesting discussions going forward. Asset management is a huge thing we want to get going. So recently, we had a meeting, a manager's meeting, where there was a call made out to have members of the staff join an asset management group, and there was a popular response. A lot of staff members were very excited to join that group. And I've also recruited some people external to the organization that work at other municipalities to talk about their journey and some of the lessons learned and the things that they would have done differently had they done it again. So looking forward to getting that working group up and running. And then also just trying to work on operational efficiencies and more community outreach. So just having more events, talking more about what we do and really celebrating some of the things we do, and also while at the same time acknowledging our challenges as well. So, and just I have a separate table, but I made sure that each one of my priorities align with your priorities, and that is very important to me. So all of our priorities align with your priorities as council members, and they touch on all these economic prosperity, definitely fiscal sustainability, livability, managing our growth effectively, revitalizing the downtown, governance and communication, operations and infrastructure, improving that. We touch on all those areas. And so now I could pause for another question, Q&A session, if you will, before I get into the proposed additional staff.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLean.
Not so much a question, just more of a comment. I'm really happy to see the focus on stormwater management, on ditching, and on that side of public works. I think with climate change, that's going to be an increased challenge for us. So I really liked all the focused areas there, and great, very comprehensive presentation.
Mayor Seegers.
I had to find the unmute. How long have you been with us?
Well, November, December, January, February.
4
Yeah,
months?
I haven't even I haven't gone to the 4 month mark yet. So
Yeah, I just want to say, wow. Like this is, I mean, you're getting a very good handle on the district and all of our issues, our concerns. You've brought in the direction that the community wants to go, right? They're looking like dark skies, for example. It's in there. So thank you. Thank you for the work you've done. You've obviously had your nose to the grindstone, and we appreciate the overall view and sharing that with us and with the community.
well, thank you to your worship and to Councillor McLean and for the comments. I have 11 more slides, I believe, and most of the stuff at the end is the numbers. It's a brass tacks of this whole thing. I was waffling on whether I wanted to present this much. There's always a concern for shell shock with this type of thing, but I find it's better to be more ambitious than less ambitious. And in my mind, if we get even 50% of these priorities completed, it will be a huge accomplishment with the staff we have in place. So we will try and get as much of this done, and it's really thanks to the leadership of council and the support we get from council that's going to make this possible to deliver this for the citizens of Seashelt. Your worship.
So today I have the opportunity to speak at the Seashell Rotary Club at noon. And I did a session on a week in the life of the mayor, right? So a week in the life kind of thing. But at the end, there was an opportunity to ask questions. And so one of the questions was around the tax increases, and particularly some of the projects and things we're doing. So the information that we've been provided over the last while is an opportunity for us to get educated and then educate the community. So I used one of the examples of our wastewater, like our water resource center, and how the difference, we have the difference in the dry flow and the wet flow numbers. And I encouraged them to go look at the agenda on YouTube from last week, where you had those videos showing the maintenance holes breaking down, right? And that the cost of that came to us for $171,000. And I said, part of what we're needing to get a handle on is, what is the state of our assets? What is it going to take to maintain them? What is it going to take to replace them? They said one of the questions that we asked at that meeting as a council to staff was, is that road safe to drive on? And that's the work that you guys have been doing. So that's the work that we're doing and our staff are doing. And yes, it costs money. And if we all of a sudden had a major failure of some piece of our infrastructure, the cost is much higher. And they totally understood where we were coming from. So it really helps when you and Director Allen come forward with all of these bits and pieces to us, but also to the community. So it gives everybody the picture. And at the end, they said, it's a difficult job that you're all doing. And we really see that you care about what's happening in this community, and you're trying to do it, to do feasible, fiscally responsible choices that provide for long-term sustainability. So you provide us with that information, and we can then provide it to the community. So thank you to you and to Director Allen.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I think I speak for Director Allen and myself when we both say we're very invested in the community, and we want to see nothing but success for it. So with that, I've laid out a lot of things that we want to we want to advance on, and the monumental task in front of us. And so these next slides are going to outline the staffing plan that I'm proposing to support this program.
Okay, just before you get started there, Councillor Toth was patiently waiting with his hand up there.
Oh, sorry, I don't see every hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I actually have a question. I've mentioned it before to your predecessor and to Mr. Devison, head of the sort of public works side of things. And we've got assets that we don't need anymore. Surplus pumps. We've got an asphalt recycler that's really not right sized for Seashell. I'm wondering if you've given any consideration to asset liquidation, or perhaps exchanging some of those assets in for a street sweeper instead. It's something I've talked about, and it's something we've heard from people in the past, and it would go a long ways towards helping our active transportation network, as it's easy enough to keep the roads clear, but it all ends up in the sidewalks and the bicycle lanes.
So if I am to paraphrase the question and understand it correctly, is we have certain underutilized assets that if we, I guess for lack of a better word, sold, that we can maybe use that funding to redirect it to other assets that are more important in the life of the community. Is that correct?
That's basically my question. I know that the asphalt recycler, I think, was used a couple of times, and I couldn't tell you the last time it was actually operated by our staff or by anybody, for example.
Yes. So on the surface, that seems like a reasonable suggestion. For example, I think crack sealing is something that's being done in a kind of a piecemeal way. And crack sealing, if you look at the kind of your bang for your buck, it's the one way that you could really extend the life of your pavement assets. So if we could get crack sealing equipment by selling some of these less utilized assets, I think that's definitely something we can explore and look at. It would make total sense. I just, as we discussed earlier, I've only been here less than 4 months, so I don't have a total picture on all the assets we do own. We do own some high flying assets, and it's something as part of these comprehensive asset management strategies that we would definitely need to look at in terms of the level of service we want to provide, and how we get there.
Okay, thank you very much. And you can continue on with the numbers.
Well, before we get to the numbers, let's get to the people.
Okay.
So, so our proposed additional staff for 2021 on the engineering side, the asset management / GIS technician is a key one for us to get asset management really moving and going. So this is going to be the person who's at the computer putting in the condition of all our buried infrastructure, our road conditions. And I've worked with some of these folks in past and other organizations I've worked at, and they're really critical to get things moving along. And then we're also asking for 2 engineering summer students, but through the grant funding opportunities, there's a large portion of that wage that's covered by the grant fund. On the wastewater side, we are looking for a wastewater laborer at the Dusty Road facility on a part-time basis, as well as a wastewater operator on a casual basis at the Water Resource Center. And then for parks, 3 positions are, we're asking for 3 positions: an arborist, another parks maintenance person, and a summer student on a casual basis. Again, that one's mostly grant funded if we're successful in getting the grant. And then finally, on the public works side, an equipment operator is something that we need as we build more roads and development builds more roads, we inherit more assets. And because of the growing requirements, we do need to make sure that our public works staff stays at the same pace that development's happening in the community. So it's a fair amount of ask for this year, but that's what we need to maintain current levels of service and start actioning on some of the things I outlined in terms of the priorities for the division. So council asked for a long-term 5-year vision of how this is going to roll out and how I see this division growing and fulfilling the needs of the residents as the community grows. And so just to map this out, so at 2021, all the yellow positions, just as a legend, the yellow ones are the new requests that are being asked in that year. And then you'll see some of the yellow positions kind of turn into the other colors of green to show that they would hopefully be part of the team. So by 2022, those 3 positions would be a part of the team, and then we would look at a additional project manager to start advancing all the grant funding projects that hopefully we will be successful in getting something nearly $30 million in grants out there that are pending. So to have somebody assist with just project management would be very helpful. By 2023, we would like to have an engineer in training position. And my understanding is this was a position that used to exist at the District of Sechelt, but hasn't been around for a while. And if you want to build succession planning and capacity, some of the best ways to do that are to bring in young engineers at the EIT stage, and then those young engineers really learn the corporate culture and the organization, and then they move on to become project managers and maybe managers at some future point themselves. And then by 2024, I'd like to add additional resources to the asset management side of things. So to have a dedicated GIS technician, we don't have that right now. We are working with SCRD to see if we can leverage some of their capabilities, but we still need to have an internal GIS capability to provide the maps we need on a timely basis, and also to put in some of our asset condition stuff into the GIS system. And then by 2025, I would like to have actual like sub department of engineering planning that actually uses asset management as the main tool to develop our capital plans or long-term capital plans, and to have asset management technician that's dedicated, GIS technician that's dedicated, and a manager of engineering planning. And at this point, 2026, it's still a long ways away, but it sets up for the possibility of 2 directorships, one for engineering and one for operations, which is the current structure they use in Parksville, just as a case study. And so that's on the engineering leadership, or the divisional leadership side. And now just looking at the operational teams themselves. So for 2021, all the yellow boxes are the new positions that I outlined earlier that we would like. Due to the uncertainty around a new operations building, we're holding still for 2022 and 2023. So no new asks on operations for those 2 years. By 2024, we would like to have a fleet mechanic to service all our vehicles. We believe we can save a lot of money by doing a lot of the servicing in-house. And by 2024, we would like a SCADA technician to do all their, remote monitoring, data collection for all our wastewater systems in the district. So that's the long-term plan. Before we get into the brass tacks of the numbers for 2021, and Director Douglas assists me on that part of the presentation. Are there any questions on this long-term vision? Obviously, this is a living plan. 2022 could present new challenges or new opportunities. And so we would revisit this on a yearly basis, but this is the way I see the divisional structure going in the future.
Okay, Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I'm really appreciating this longer term staffing focus. It's so much better to plan than doing it 1 year at a time. So thank you to everyone for putting these multi-year plans together. With the GIS position that's proposed, is that different than the current GIS position, or are we looking to revamp that one a little bit? Or
So currently we do have a GIS person who I understand I haven't met personally yet. He's unfortunately been on long-term disability. And so this is there's some uncertainty around that, and perhaps Director Douglas can comment on it when he gets into his part of the presentation. But this would be similar to that role right now that's not being fulfilled, but with a more of an asset management focus on that.
okay, so it's possible that it's shifted from, I believe it's under the IT department right now.
Yeah, so with the possibility of leveraging some of SCRD's capabilities, some of the more mundane aspects of GIS would be there. The things I'm talking about in terms of GIS is, like, for example, when we do our camera inspections for our buried utilities, we can actually have our utilities segmented. And then so you go into GIS and you click on that segment, and then you can actually link to a video of that inspection. And so then what the asset management technician would do is look at every camera inspection and start categorizing our infrastructure in terms of very poor, poor, fair, good, excellent. And then that's how you build out your CIPP, your cured in place pipelining program. And then you also, once you start putting these layers on top of each other, so if you have your pavement condition indexes overlaid with your storm sewer conditions and your sanitary, then you'll start seeing hotspots in your district. And those hotspots make sense in terms of a major capital project where you're doing a full reconstruction, all the assets at the same time to get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of a infrastructure project. So it's just building those layers to develop hotspots where potential projects can happen in the district.
Okay, anybody else? All right. Seeing no more questions?
Okay, almost to the end, just the number slides now, and maybe a fun one at the end. So, Director Douglas.
Thank you, Director Dillon. If I could just go back for my last comment that I said about development services, the 80,000 there is a transfer from reserves for the carryover project, and that's for the OCP update. I think I said it came from a grant, but it's not. It's just a carryover project from 2020 to 2021. So I just want to clarify that. Okay, so the engineering budget here, we do have included the new engineer position into the budget. And then we have also included professional development for that person. So you see a little bit of an increase there for professional development. And down below where the revenues are, we had budgeted 21,000 last year for revenues in engineering, and we exceeded that. And just with the amount of work that we see from development, we're estimating that at $81,000, which is a $60,000 increase over last year. If we go to the next slide. So the next slide is about fleet maintenance, and really this is under the Public Works manager. And you'll see there are increases here, and we did have a couple vehicles that were getting a little bit older that required a little more work last year. So we've had to increase this budget just due to our fleet's age as it gets older. We have budgeted to move out a couple of vehicles that are about 14 years old. They'll be coming through the capital budgeting. But other than that, really no changes, just kind of watching our costs on our maintenance. Next slide. Municipal buildings, you'll see that there's really a change there in cost allocation. One's got a $34,000 credit, the other one's got a $34,000 increase. It was just a reallocation there. And then sellers and benefits. Once again, I think that's a reallocation of time from Public Works to buildings. There's no additional time built into the budget for this person. And then down below, there's some debts that are associated to this area. And there's an revenue item called MFA actuarial adjustments. And as your debt gets older, the actuarial adjustment goes up. So that's just a recognition of the actuarial adjustment on debt going up. And then parks. Once again, nothing new from a wage perspective in parks. The contract increase there is increased washroom cleaning. to what was originally budgeted last year. And the increase in other expenses is increase of water usage or cost of water that we're using within the parks area. And other than that, not really too much in the way of change in the budget numbers. In Public Works, no additional staff here. There are a couple of lifts here that have been asked for 2 years, and I've been trying to push it off a little bit. But one is line painting, an additional 15,000 there for line painting, and an additional 20,000 for paving small patches and things around town. So often when Sanath is doing a project, either a project or let's say a subdivision is going in, he finds that the existing road needs some improvement that's not associated with the development or with the project. And so he's always needing $4 or $5 grand to clean up, whether it be some, drainage on the road or, just a patch of road that needs to be tying into where the new development or the new project is tying into. So we've included a little more funds in there for that type of work. Often John spends his budget, so there's not a lot of room for somebody else to do some necessary work as well. Once again, professional development up again a little bit, but once again, it'll be reviewed prior to see what's virtual. There's $8 grand in there for short-term interest on the build of the operation center, if that happens. And other expenses up a little bit. That's just it's garbage disposal, that whether that comes from picking up at different sites or our own garbage from the works yard. So solid waste, this has changed a bit. This has got a couple months of the new service that would come into play either late October, early November. And so there is an increase here to the service level for the couple of months. And part of the whole planning there, you'll see that there's a transfer from reserves of 183 to cover the difference in revenues that we're collecting through the garbage user fees for this year. And as we go forward next year, there will be an increase to the garbage fees to cover off the full year of the increase in service. And then wharves, which is our last area. We have just really a minor increase. Well, actually, overall it's a minor decrease, but to the expenses, and the revenues are anticipated to be very similar to the previous year. We are transferring a little bit of money into a reserve for the wharves. Looks like there's $6,100. So as we move forward with, regards to Porpoise, the Bay, I think we'll plan, put together a business plan for that area that should resemble greater revenues and work towards a sustainable wharf area. So that's all I have for the numbers.
Okay, thank you, Director Douglas. Is there any questions from council? Councillor McLean?
Yeah, just going into the engineering budget. You said you expected the license permits and fees to go up, but it seems like it's a really substantial number. We're talking 17,000 in 2019, 29,000 in 2020, and 81,000 in 2021. Like that's 150% increase plus. So is there something behind that? Was that a recent rate change or just increased development activity?
Yeah, I would, if you hang on half a sec here, I'll just go to the budget area and
I have it on the screen right now too.
yeah, the estimate is that what we put in is based on what we see as the activity in either in development.
Okay, maybe if we could just double check that, because I don't think there was that big of an increase in development services off the top of my head. So it just seems, it would be great if we got that much. I'll take it, but I just want to make sure we're accurately budgeting.
Okay, I will do that.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Councillor Rowe.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to thank both the directors for their fulsome presentations. I mean, we asked for it, so we got it, and I really appreciate the long-term visioning. I'd kind of be interested to know, echoing Darnelda a bit, whether our YouTube views have gone up, because I've sent so many people to Director Dillon's presentations over the last few weeks. So I think around communication for all of this sort of stuff, the more that we can do around that we can reference people to, is really helpful in the conversations that I am having and will be having over the next few weeks. So just those couple comments. I love the idea of the summer students as well. And I'm just wondering whether maybe the CAO might know, have we used students before? Is this something that we do every summer, or is this something new for us?
No, we have used them in the past in different areas, parks, for instance. Okay. One of the areas. We used them in the office before as well, typically tied to the Canada Student Grant Program.
Okay, great. And is Director Allen still with us?
Yes, I am.
Sorry, I was just reading back on my notes, Director Allen. I'm a bit tardy. When you were talking about this, so this is under your Christmas wish list for a development planner. And I think I heard you say something about, and maybe it's in relation, if that is approved, that you would redo the Planner 2 position. Was it?
Yeah, that's correct. That's what you heard. That's a proposal.
Expand that a bit for me, what you meant by that?
You betcha. So I think that the Planner 2 position as it stands now, we're fortunate enough that this individual is working beyond his capacity and expectation. So there's that part of it and future training. But I also believe that it's appropriate to separate the approving officer from the review of subdivision applications, and then he comes in towards the end, right? So now we have a manager of planning basically doing fundamentally basic subdivisions because we don't have the person to do so. And so then having a senior development planner / deputy approving officer to oversee that side of the department, but then fills the need for more assistance in that regard.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think that's it. Just thanks again. You've given me lots to think about.
I do have 2 last slides, but they're fun. They're not very heavy ones, so I'll just finish those off. So thanks to your worship and council for the opportunity for us to present this comprehensive view today. We have outlined a very ambitious plan to get things moving in Sechelt and create the kind of community that we want and know it can be. Thank you to Director Douglas for assistance on the financial aspects, and thank you to Director Allen for also outlining the vision for planning, because we're only going to achieve these things if we work together. So I think this kind of illustrates our feeling right now, is that we're down here and we're looking towards the light, and we're looking to council's leadership to bring us to the light. So with additional resources, we can get there. I don't know. This kind of looks like it might be Megan on her staff orientation day. I'm not sure. So thank you very much. And I know we've been asking questions throughout this presentation, but if there's some closing thoughts or questions, be happy to address those.
Okay, thank you for that. Any last questions? I saw Councilor McLean, you had your hand up and then it went down, so.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, and Mayor Segers.
Thank you. So the numbers that we've seen today do not yet include any of the staff requests, correct?
The only staff requests that are in are the chief building inspector and the new engineer.
Right, and those came from last year to
Yes,
show in this year. We had part of them in last year, but the full lift is in this year.
correct.
So the next conversation that we have, we will start looking at some of these numbers and what they would look at. Are we looking at capital next? I just want to I know you've gone over this with us. I'd like you to kind of lay out for the community, what's the next step? And when are we going to start actually having some of these numbers come forward?
Sure. So the next meeting, we're inviting, I think, 3 groups in. So it'll be tourism, library, and RCMP. They all have a part of our budget, so we're going to hear from them. We also are preparing to have a 5-year picture of the staffing at the next meeting. And then we'll be moving on to capital, and then just a refinement of the one-time and ongoing asks. We expect the capital and the one-time asks to kind of go over 2 meetings, especially with having the other three groups in ahead of that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Lamb.
Yeah. I was just, I'm just kind of concerned that, Sechelt in the summertime and in the wintertime is a pretty well-maintained place. And we're adding Trail Avenue. We've got an application in for a budget for a large trail that I think connects Mason Road down to Kinnickinnick or something like that. And that's all, I'm just, how do we change our parks or our, all this stuff costs money and it takes people. And so when we're developing these areas, we have to look at, we have to look at how we can maintain them in a better way. You can't have 3 people walking up and down Trail Avenue maintaining the flowers and stuff like that. So, especially when the gardens at the Water Resource Center don't get touched. So it's complicated. And it's some tough decisions, but I don't know how we come up with an answer for it, but just got to be thinking about it. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Was there any other questions before we move on? I think we've reached the end of item 5.1. Thanks for everybody for those presentations. They were great. They were informative. And we look forward to the next stages of the budget process. Moving on to the additional item 5.2, responsive community grant, motion to receive the report. Move seconded, all in favor? And who's presenting this one? Mayor Seegers.
All right, I got a phone call last night from a representative from the CI reconciliation movement. And they are looking at doing a project in the district of Sechelt and on their land, and they'd like us to partner with them. And then the end result would be a grant application to Canada Healthy Communities Initiatives. We're talking a trail along the water, so that we would have a full trail all the way along Trail Bay, for example, and looking at some historical fencing that was put up years ago between the two communities. What they'd like to do, and this is what came up last night, was there is a $7,500 grant available through community foundations. It's called a responsive community grant, and would actually allow CIA to work with the Sechelt Nation and us and hire a person to look at the possibilities of this grant and see if we can pull together a grant application for us and a grant application for the Sechelt Nation to do a joint project. The reason I'm bringing this forward now is this, as I said, it came to me last night. The deadline for the application for this $7,500 grant is Monday at 5 o'clock. Monday, March 1st at 5 o'clock, right? So it would be a letter of intent. It does not need, I checked prior, it does not need a council resolution, but in order for CIA to put this in on our behalf, because we're the ones who'd have to apply for it, they don't have charitable status or anything like that. I need to get council or committee support at this point, and we could then ratify at council on the 3rd. So questions? Councillor McLean. Sorry, Councillor Scott jumped in there.
Thank you, Chair. Could you just go over again what we are looking to do with this grant? So $75,000, what will we get?
$7,500.
$7,500.
$7,500. It's a small, basically capacity grant to hire a person who would then, so we wouldn't have our staff or the Sechelt Nation staff pulling the various groups together who would be a part of this whole proposal. Okay, so Downtown Business Association, for example, would be involved. The CI would be involved. Sechelt Indian Government District would be involved. We would be involved. So our staff have a lot to do. What we're looking at is hiring a person. If we got this grant, we would hire a person to pull all the pieces together for the application for the grant. So the deadline, this grant has 2 intakes. This is one that just came out a few weeks ago, has 2 intakes. One is March 9th. There's no way we can meet that. The next intake is May. Possible that we could pull all the pieces together and the Sechelt Nation and us both do an application for the same project, but different components of it, and do one project together. This would be doing the prep work by somebody who's not staff to get us ready for an application.
So just hiring a consultant for this.
Basically hiring a consultant to do this.
Councillor Kuster.
Yeah, Mayor Seegers pretty much answered my question. So it's a grant in order for us to apply for other grants. The body, yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor McLean.
And who is the funding organization for this grant?
Community foundations,
Of Canada or local?
local.
Okay. So the question that I'm going to try and weigh with is, should these funds be used for grant applications or they should be used for direct work?
It's been, this has actually been reviewed with the executive director of community foundations, and they're totally in support. Like, it fits the program. It's meant to be seed money for organizations who are looking at doing other projects. That's what it's meant for. So it totally fits.
Okay, Councilor Kuster, your hand's still up. Did you have more? No? Anybody else? All right. So do we need to create a motion for this?
Yes, we do.
Or
We
letter?
do. And it's that the committee recommends that council supports submitting an application to Community Foundation Sea Shout for a responsive community grant for $7,500.
So do we have a mover?
I'll move that.
Okay. Seconded, and okay, seconded. All in favor?
But Councilor McLean has a question.
Before we vote,
Yeah.
I'd like to amend it to change the name of the organization to the Sunshine Coast Foundation.
Okay, yes. It is Sunshine Coast Foundation.
Yeah, I don't want us applying to an organization that doesn't exist.
Yeah, right. They changed their name. All right. Sorry about that.
Okay, so on the amended name change, still moved by Mayor Seegers. Seconded? Seconded. All in favor? All right, carried.
Thank you very much.
I think that brings us to the end. So motion to adjourn and move into the question period. Moved, seconded, all in favor?